It is only a matter of time before China decides to take Taiwan. And how China attempts to do this will take quite a few videos to cover. This is part of a series. Nevertheless, in the words of Dr. Sarah Payne of the U.S. Naval War College, we need to take dictators at their word here. China wants Taiwan. They will do everything they can to get them in the fold. Now, Taiwan represents a great many things to the Chinese Communist Party. This is it's the last part of China that needs to be brought back into the country's sphere. It is a seemingly nationalist holdout against the true heirs of China. It is the thorn in the side of the communists sitting in Beijing. As said by Xi Jinping, the people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are one family. No one can sever our family bonds, and no one can stop the historical trend of national reunification. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. Taiwan is something that shouldn't exist. It must be brought back into the fold. It must be subject to the monopoly of the Chinese Communist Party, at least so the thinking in China goes. And hey, I've said that enforcing VPN bans is a leading indicator of war with China. Well, if you travel, you really need PIA VPN. Look, by the time you see this video, I will probably be at Fort Knox in Kentucky. Can't tell you why I'm there, but I can tell you that I do not trust the Wi-Fi at the hotel or on the plane. And, I get a lot of crap from other programmers who say, well, TLS takes care of encryption. You don't need a VPN. Look, tell that to German General Frank Graf, who dialed into a VoIP call on an unsecure line in a hotel room, and Russia listened in on the call and put the conversation on the internet. The fact is that if you're not using a VPN, you are connecting to an unknown Wi-Fi, your privacy is at risk. PIA VPN acts as a tunnel between your computer and the public internet that hackers and rogue government agents can't penetrate. And yeah, if you want to consume content from various countries with access restrictions, PIA VPN allows you to change your location so you can watch shows available in that country on Netflix. But it's useful, but I mainly use it for security. I even use it when I go over to a friend's house, my parents' house, or some girl's house, because I don't know the status of their network. So click the link in the description below or go to piavpn.com/McBeth to get 83% off plus 4 months free. Now let's get back to the big idea. Losing a democratic Taiwan to China would be economically and technologically devastating. American tech companies have close ties with Taiwanese manufacturers, particularly those specializing in machinery and semiconductors. The loss of Taiwan would signal a failure of multilateral regional partnerships and their ability to counter an aggressor state like China. Their loss would also paint the United States as sort of a paper tiger on the world stage. Regionally, the loss of Taiwan would signal the futility of resisting China and the expanding sphere of influence within the region and the larger Pacific. And finally, the loss of Taiwan would signal the beginning of the end of a Western-led international maritime order, which has allowed for global prosperity and peaceful exchange of goods, services, and capital, and a relatively stable world order since World War II. Now, from a military perspective, a blockade of Taiwan by China would be the most effective in the form of warfare of resources and support for such an operation. A massive amphibious assault and air assault on the island to physically capture it would present some tremendous stumbling blocks for the Chinese military, and such an operation could spark outcry against the Chinese invasion. China doesn't want a Ukraine on its hands, and in this case, China is Russia. A blockade means the Chinese will likely use ships, special forces, and precision strikes against targets such as airports and ports, which could easily be destroyed or damaged beyond quick repairs. Chinese naval assets might be used to sever some undersea cables connecting the island to the rest of the world. Now, from there, a blockade could commence, slowly cutting Taiwan off from the outside world. Food, energy, and information could be choked off. Now, this Chinese blockade is going to have two parts. You have a force maintaining it against the island's population, and you have a force needed to keep others from trying to break through and relieve Taiwan's besieged population. To top it all off, the greatest disadvantage here is the tyranny of distance. Anyone coming to the aid of Taiwan will have to cross a vast ocean. So how do we solve this problem? There's an idea from World War II that comes to mind: America's use of mobile seaports during our Normandy landings. These mobile seaports allowed the United States to have technological surprise and advantage, countering German preparations along the French coastline. The idea here is simple, cheap, and hard to counter militarily. It's called RECAP, or Rapid Emergency Construction of Armaments Project, and it envisions a way to leverage American partnerships and American can-doism to keep Taiwan free of Chinese takeover. Once Taiwan is under blockade, the clock is ticking when it comes to our options. The biggest disadvantage the U.S. has in keeping Taiwan free from the yoke of the Chinese Communist Party is that tyranny of distance. Some 6,100 miles from the western U.S. at the closest, and some 1,700 miles from Guam, 465 miles from Okinawa. The idea behind RECAP is to overwhelm any kind of Chinese response, lethal or otherwise, with cheap, easy to make, and easy to build ships. RECAP ships are built using the cheapest materials possible and off-the-shelf equipment, making their construction far cheaper than traditional transport options. Essentially, the idea is to have a Pacific version of the Berlin airlift that leverages what the U.S. has at its disposal. Each RECAP vessel weighs around 425 tons, with around 150 short tons, or about 300,000 pounds of cargo space. Alternatively, these vessels could carry up to 18 TEU containers. These would be 20-foot containers. These vessels would be around 150 feet long and around 50 feet at their widest, which they call beam. Now, I know what you're thinking. 20 shipping containers, that's basically smaller than anything, right? Yeah, but we're going to build a lot of them. A lot of them. Size and composition are key here. We need to build these quickly and cheaply, and possibly in places like the Philippines, and we will need to understand that many of these will be seized or destroyed during the operation. So they're going to be cheap, but we're going to build a lot of them. RECAP ships are built with repurposed 2,600 horsepower diesel truck engines, commandeered from vehicles on hand or purchased for this purpose. The crew is quartered in camper vans, and the max crew would be about 7. 1 master, 1 mate, 1 diesel engine mechanic, and 4 deck hands, and theoretically they might even be able to be unmanned. Inexpensive ferry decking and flotation would be used to construct these ships. Straight steel hulls would also be used here. No bends would be necessary. The simpler the better. Also, economics is king. We are finding economically sustainable and efficient methods of challenging China's blockade through volume. Now, if you want more specifics, because there are a lot of them to consider, check out ryanmcbeth.substack.com, where an unclassified plan is available. RECAP essentially spams the server with enough ships to overwhelm any kind of non-lethal or even lethal Chinese response to these vessels. Ideally, RECAP ships would travel between 12 knots loaded and around 16 knots unloaded, setting off from Manila in the Philippines in the best case, or Australia in the worst case. Now, I need to talk about the geography of Taiwan for a moment, because most of the island looks like Vietnam and Afghanistan got together and had a baby. The western half of Taiwan is well within China's ability to keep locked out from outside help. But on the eastern side of the island, there's mountains and there's cliffs. They basically guarantee that China will not be able to invade from the east. So if Taiwan's military or their partisans survive the initial assault and then head into the hills of the east, they stand a really good chance of surviving. And if the Chinese are stupid enough to venture into the mountains, it will make Red Dawn look like an episode of Teletubbies. The blessings of geography will also help RECAP ships supply the Taiwanese, because there's enough beach to land supplies, and the distance to portage these supplies from the beach to the mountains is very small. Less than 700 meters in some cases. Now, these ships will mainly rely on numbers for survivability, with the intention of overwhelming Chinese efforts to stop the supply ships. So how does China counter this? The simple answer is they can't. The longer answer is they can, but as Sun Tzu said, if he sends reinforcements everywhere he will be weak. So if you're sending warships to the other eastern side of the island to deal with RECAP ships, that's fewer ships that are guarding the artificial harbors and landing ships in the western part of the island. Remember, In warfare, you create dilemmas, not problems for your adversary. And again, hey, if you're interested in this idea, check out the white paper at ryanmcbeth.substack.com. It's free and unclassified. Also, don't forget to grab my novel, The Wind Machine, which deals with a war with China of its own. And if you like my t-shirt, I wore this just today for you Navy guys who might be fighting China in a little while. Live, Laugh, Launch, Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer will play a major role if deterrence fails and there is a conflict with China. Thank you guys so much for watching. Wow, this girl from Watertown sure is cool.
Hey kid, what's going on?
Think tank!
You know, a girl from Watertown is kind of like riding a moped. It's lots of fun till your friends see you on one. What's really cool is a t-shirt or hoodie from Bunker Branding.
Wow! Intel Life! Control-C, Control-V! That's exactly what we do!
And Bunker Branding has all sorts of cool gear.
Intel Life, Aerosol, Live, Laugh, Launch for Destroyer, Trident, HIMARS, and Patriot. Think outside the bomb. Drone Suite Drone, Department of the Boat People, landmines, and even the tow missile. It would behoove you to grab one today.
Girls from Watertown aren't cool, so wear your Bunker Branding gear.
Now I know.
And knowing's half the battle. Hey babe, you want to dance?
Bunker Branding.